welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. It is midweek, OU Houston. We're excited about the upcoming game, game 2, week 2. We'll see what the Sooners are bringing to the table. I'm Steve.
I'm Connor.
Jay.
And guys, we don't have any realism here tonight. It's nothing but homers unless you want to play the part of a realist, Jay.
I've been kind of leaning that way.
Okay.
So is this the first
18
is this the first pod without the realist?
I believe it is. And we'll see how well it goes.
What a
we may
slacker.
we may have to take a vote and just boot him off the island.
Priorities.
I don't know how
Where
it
is
goes.
this realist?
No one knows. He's at an undisclosed location somewhere,
Raving.
somewhere in the Northeast, New York City, something like that. We'll see if he dials in at some point. That'd be a lot of fun. We get to see what he's up to. But guys, the midweek pods are brought to us by Dr. Michael Keene. Dr. Keene is a board-certified surgeon specializing in orthopedic sports medicine. For over 20 years, Dr. Keene served the greater Oklahoma City area along with Western Oklahoma. Not only does this include surgical skills in primarily the knees and shoulders, he is a constant figure on football sidelines throughout Oklahoma high schools and colleges. Dr. Keene's deep commitment to sports and devotion to his patient proves that he is the man to see, even though he's an Oklahoma State fan. Thank you, Dr. Keene, for sponsoring the pod.
Thank you.
So, guys, we got a lot of excitement to cover. I think it's exciting because we learned some things in the first game, and we have a whole bunch of question marks from the first game. They're good question marks for the most part, because it's can we continue the success and can we get things better than where they are, even though they're pretty good. All in all, it wasn't the most perfect performance we wanted to see, but we knew we were going to be playing in vanilla. We didn't think there was any reason to believe that we were going to come out and give them everything we got, Temple. So we probably were being pretty prescriptive and thinking about, well, what do we want to do to see what we've got, experiment in these areas, limit ourselves just for the sake of getting good practice reps and getting a lot of rotation in, which we did. And then the questions emerged, which is the offensive line as good as it needs to be? Is the running back room as good as it needs to be? Who's going to step up at receiver, et cetera? So this week, I'm looking for a lot of answers in terms of offensive line, what the entire package looks like schematically. What are you guys looking for?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head with kind of the word scripted. It felt like a I don't know if you even use that word. Maybe it's been in my head. It felt like a scripted scrimmage. I mean, it felt like, and things we're reading afterwards, what Brent said on the post game around we stuck to the short game by design. I mean, Jay, you and I talked about it extensively during the game, and I even wrote about it. If you guys want to check out the article on our Substack, there's no way that the coaching staff.
Well, wait a second. Hold on. We may be having a realist
wait.
a realist moment.
A realist appearance.
Yes, are you there? Are you safe?
Is he at an occult?
Hear you. There he is. Lucas, where are you? You appear to be at some kind of concert. Are you going to join us?
Lucas.
No, you have to take the hood off to talk.
Yeah.
He brought some friends. Wow. Yeah, no good? You're done? Okay, yeah, uh-huh. All right, yeah. Oh, you number one, I get it. Yeah, that's great. Enjoy the Pearl Jam concert, man. If I could find a way to boot you from the room, I would. He's gone. All right. Continue with the serious conversation.
No, it's good to hear from the realist, or not so good. I don't know. You can interpret that how you will. No, I think just kind of what I was saying. It's as Brent said after the game, a lot of what they did offensively was by design. And by that, I still will never believe that defensive coaching staff didn't see what we all saw from the stands, and the fact that Temple for a good majority of the game was running a single high safety, or even at times a no safety look, an empty safety look, and not exploiting that. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and take Brent's word for what it is and trust that that actually was the game plan. And that's kind of where I get into the scripted portion. If that is the case, looked like we were just trying to work out some kinks and make sure that the schemes we were running, the coverages we were running from an offensive line standpoint, the routes we were running were all kind of preset and predetermined. Didn't see a lot of audibles. Didn't see a lot of checking out of plays and checking into different plays.
The rumor is they wouldn't even let them audible.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even let them audible on the line and into different blocking schemes and pass coverages.
So if
and
that's
you wouldn't let him check down.
Yeah, if that's the case, I mean, I think what we saw Saturday was just kind of take what you can get mentality. Coming into Houston, does that change? I don't know. I mean, the coaching staff watched the Houston game against UNLV and it didn't look spectacular. So does Houston turn into another tune-up game where you're working on something else this week and we don't see a variation of another part of the game? I don't know. I would like to see us open the playbook a little bit more. I would like to see, despite the 3 touchdowns, I'd like to see Dion Burks get into the defensive secondary some.
At some point, you have to, right? If you're gonna, even if you're scrimmaging, even if you're practicing, you got to look at your full arsenal of what you have
and see what you got,
and see,
right?
like, let's see how this works.
Yeah, so
including audibling and checking down and all of that, because those are real time game decisions,
and you're gonna have to do it a lot in the SEC.
Yeah.
So I want to see that. I came away from last Friday, and I think I said Saturday earlier. I came away from last Friday pretty upset, just because it wasn't the, you know, put your foot on their throat performance that I think we all thought we were going to see on both sides of the ball. Stepping back a little bit, having a few days, seeing some of the struggles from these other teams, other big teams, has tempered my pessimism to an extent. You don't win the national championship, you don't get into the playoff after week 1, and based on your performance against Temple. So go get better this week. Get ready for Tulane, who put up 52 points against their opponent last week, and eventually, turn all of those good things into a full readiness for Tennessee in a couple.
Well, you made a lot of those points in your article which you posted to the blog. I encourage everyone to go read it on Substack, because you kind of came full circle between what you were feeling immediately after the game and then the morning after that, what your thoughts are once you take everything in. Jay, what are your thoughts?
I think after a few days and thinking about it, I'm still confused at the O-line situation. And I think what's most concerning for me is I find it extremely interesting that when you have one player go down unexpectedly at a position, that you simply just don't replace that play. And to shuffle the entire line because you're afraid to put in Bates or even a true freshman at a center, even if it's just for the next drive, just to see how he does. Like, if you were afraid he couldn't handle it, you couldn't handle it for a drive or two to see how it went. You had to shuffle everybody around.
Yeah.
And we don't have the type of experience in the line where, oh, we'll just move everybody around and it'll be fine.
But maybe that's why they did it. Maybe that's why he moves everyone around, and he was going to do it anyway.
But I guess I'm saying is if you think you have an idea who you're 5 on, right? Or at least 4 out of your 5, they need time there.
True.
Right? Like, that's where they need to be. This isn't their 3rd season playing left guard, and if you have to move them to right guard, okay, whatever.
Yeah, learn one thing and do it well versus learn everything.
I don't think they were ready for that, and maybe that's in itself is a learning experience. Maybe he learned, okay, we can't shuffle it all like that. They're not ready for that. These guys do need to just stay where they're at, and I need to just plug in the next guy and see how it goes. And then if that's not working, we'll move to plan C and shuffle everybody around.
I mean, Bill B has a lot on the line right now. Like, regardless of whether or not this was all scripted or we didn't get to audible or move into different run block schemes or anything like that, Bebo is he's further put himself behind the 8 ball here he was coming in with criticism, and you're leaving the game against Temple with criticism. It's just like
Well, this is what we're
the deck is stacking up against him to say, at what point do we decide that we just go and be the line that we need to be to say we have those 5 guys, 4 or 5 guys, and Jay, you said it really well. Like, get great at one thing. I don't see us being great at anything right now across the board. We need to go be great at one thing before we can go start doing different things with different guys.
and we've all discussed at nausea how it takes us too long to get our line to gel, right? But usually by the Texas game, everything seems to be coming together. We've figured out our 5. We don't have that time now.
Well, we haven't had it in the past because usually, I mean, at least half the time we have a loss by
Yeah.
Texas.
But we really don't have it now. And now I feel like we're even further back than normal. So
It
so we
feels
have to
that
be
way.
we have to be
I don't
ready.
know if
We have
that's
to be
true.
ready quicker. And
Yeah.
I feel like we're a step behind our normal development of who our lines
I
are.
think that feeling probably though is rooted just in a lot of the unknown. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a guy out there right now that has proven himself at OU. It's not to say that he's not there, but and I agree, Jay. Like, it's a very uneasy feeling to have. I don't know by the time we get to Tulane.
I mean, what would have to happen for Houston and Tulane for you to be like, we can handle Tennessee?
Some plus 20-yard runs
And
and
I mean, a significant jump.
and
Yeah,
and Jackson
yes.
Arnold having
Yeah.
a pocket.
A significant jump, control,
Like a bigger
and
jump than what
dominance.
we've seen happen in the last decade.
Right.
From game 1 to 4.
Last decade, I don't know.
From game 1 to 4.
Last 4 years.
Yeah, I
Last
don't
4
know.
years.
We've seen some jumps. We've seen some pretty big jumps.
I feel like lines have been good and they've become great.
I don't know.
I don't know that
Well, I don't think we have to have a 2018 or 2017 line to feel like we're going to win all those games. I feel like it'd be great if we did, but we don't have to make the jump to Joe Moore award-winning best line that you've seen across the country. We just have to be very effective.
there's a good chance a top 3 pick in the draft is going to be in Norman in 3 weeks at defensive end.
Right. 3 weeks from now, yeah.
I mean,
Tennessee.
like a legit NFL top 5 pick.
Right.
We are not ready for that.
It
From
doesn't
what we
seem that
saw,
we are.
we are absolutely
I would agree.
a
I agree.
1,000%. And when's the
I agree.
last time that we had to block someone like that wasn't on Texas
Yeah, I was about to say
or
Texas.
wasn't on, right? So I think they're going to have to scheme that player. They're going to have to put a tight end on that side to help chip. I think it's going to limit our offense because I think we're going to have another guy just because I don't think we have the guy that can handle him by himself.
Well, that's going to stretch Seth Luttrell's ability to scheme that, or perhaps and just run in a method that minimizes his effectiveness altogether. So that whatever we're doing, like one thing you can do is just everything is go quick. So you're not relying on anything that's a deep drop back, let the play develop, or if it is, there's so much more going on that he can't just commit to one thing. And in those plays, then you do have 2 guys that are sitting there working him, and you're just thinking. So yeah, one way or another, you scheme around that, but you're going to have to get a lot more effective across the board at everything you do.
That limits
in a
limits
scheme
your
like that,
offense.
it limits it. I don't know. You can be pretty creative in that, but you got to execute. You got to catch every ball that's thrown to you. You've got to make the run that matters and get the extra yardage that matters. It's lots of little things that have to come together for that to be effective if you truly don't have an answer for a guy coming off the end.
And the thing that we can, I mean, talking about Tennessee specifically, it'll be different when we get down the line with teams who have a stacked defense top to bottom, from front 7 to defensive back. But Tennessee specifically, if you can figure out a way to counter their line or at least tame them to an extent, their secondary is not good. So part of me, again, is it just back to this whole scheming and this whole ramp up to this Tennessee game. I really feel like that's what this is. And what we're seeing and what we're going to see the next couple of weeks is are we just working stuff out that we're thinking we can exploit Tennessee with? Like, is it going to be because I do think, Steve, to your point, I think a lot of it is going to be handle the line, get the ball out because our receivers are better than their defensive backs.
I'll play the realist on this part. I think we went in with the vanilla game plan and we weren't good enough to dominate with the vanilla game plan. That's what I in terms of blocking schemes.
With a line that got thrown a curveball
Yes.
on the second series.
Yes. That's my realist take.
Fair.
I don't think they worried enough to adjust it, but I don't think by any means they were expecting it to be that hard to gain yards on the ground or to protect Jackson.
Well, and at some point, Temple realizes we're not taking shots because they're putting 7+ in the box. And like we said, like I know the line got dominated, but anything that's going to try to develop in the run game or anything else that we're trying to run inside, it's not going to be there regardless. I mean, you could put Broken Arrow out there.
I mean, do you really? I mean, we have to listen to a little bit what we're saying. Do you really think they're going to run plays? Let's see if R5 can block their 7 and just see what happens.
I think to a degree they are.
That puts your players at risk.
No, I think to a degree they are.
Quarterback at risk. Jackson got hit entirely too much.
But we did it.
We did
it.
And I think you do it anytime you don't have just your full game plan. And there's two angles to it. One is we're not going to be able to play with our full game plan playbook in week 1 like we will in week 7 or 10. So part of it is you just can't do that. But the other part is everybody does that, especially when you have the luxury of doing it. You go out there and you simplify and you say, we're going to work on this, this, and this. And we may have whatever it is, 100 pages, and we're only taking the first 30.
But is it beneficial to know that you're probably only get a 3-yard run? Is that good for your running back? Like, is that good for them? Is that good for their development?
You're only going to get a 3-yard run.
Well, but
I'm thinking they're thinking I'm going to isolate this player and make him make a play.
Do you have to call 20 deep posts or go routes? No. You just throw
one or two. But if you do one,
just to lay them to lay the defense back.
But here's the problem: they probably are confident enough that gets hit. Like the one to Hester, he dropped. There's a good side to him dropping it from a coach's standpoint because that drive is over if he hits it, and you almost have to tell Jackson, and you're never going to do this, overthrow the post even if it's open, because I'm just trying to keep him honest. I don't want you to actually complete it, because I want to see what we can do on the next play when it's 2nd and 10.
And I don't think we got to do a lot of what we wanted to do because of the defensive production as well.
Yeah, I mean, that throws everything out.
We're thrown into short field situations, 4 or 5 times in the game because of turnovers. And I do think there was a schedule that Luttrell had that he was trying to maintain and didn't anticipate for the amount of, or the lack of yards that were left to execute that plan. And let me kind of back up for a second. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have looked better against Temple. Like, we should have looked better. I expect more from the team than what I saw, regardless. I mean, offensively, if we run in there with however many plays that we plan on running, 100 plays that say we're going to run this play in sequential order, no matter what, I expect us to dominate regardless against Temple. That being said, you're throwing a couple curveballs with the offensive line going out. I think Temple made some decent adjustments based on what we were not doing. And again, it's Temple, but regardless, and again, homerism is oozing from every part of me. There's got to be a method to the madness. Like, there's no way that the 5 guys we have up front at the University of Oklahoma are as bad as what they seemingly looked last Friday.
Yeah, I think that has to be true.
Well, you got to hope.
Well, you got to hope, but you got to think about it from the standpoint of, okay, so you've got, that you're going in against Temple to begin with. And so you're not spending the full week preparing for Temple the way that you would prepare for Tennessee. we're probably already working on Tennessee, and we're working on other things too. So no matter what, you're limited. Immediately, you're limited right out of the gate. And you're limited and you're okay with that because you feel like you're so overmatched or they're overmatched that you can kind of do whatever you want
It's kind of a walk.
and you're going to win the game. It's a scrimmage.
But I feel like we didn't do whatever we wanted. We did not
no,
do
we tried
whatever
whatever we wanted. It just didn't succeed
There
the
you
way
go.
we wanted it to succeed.
We did what we wanted. We
And
did
that's
what
a
we wanted to do,
legitimate criticism.
but we didn't successfully do it.
Yes, no, very legitimate there.
Right.
To say that.
And I would completely agree with that.
Yeah, no, I
Fully.
think there's no doubt about that.
There's a lot we need to see. Like, there's a lot we need to see on the offensive side of the ball.
Right.
I mean, until they show us what we think they have, none of us are going to fully believe it.
Well, and here's the opportunity or the problem with where we are coming into the Houston game, because Houston's defense looks like they play with just 10 people.
We're not going to learn
It
much.
looks really bad.
We're not going to know a lot.
So we may not know very much at all. We may get a false sense of security. And the coaches are smarter about this than us. Knowing that, they're probably going into it thinking, well, we're going to just, again, do whatever we want by script, not by what's dictated on the field.
I mean, I was talking about it before the podcast. Look at how much rest Danny and Billy, our two best defensive players, got on Friday. Like, SEC play comes around, those dudes are on the field 70% of the time, probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
probably more.
70
probably
plus.
90.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not going to happen. And again, that's an extreme because defense, top to bottom, played amazing. Like, regardless of who was in there, it was an incredible performance.
But that's how different this game and that game were to what's going to happen down the season.
Right.
Yeah. And it's going to be that way on offense for sure.
Do you worry that do you worry that the staff was going to expect more from Houston than maybe what shows up?
Yes. Now they probably reorient themselves around a new reality.
Yeah.
And
I expected more from Houston than what I think is going to show up.
They may dial everything down again. So you may get another version of extreme vanilla, which may even be very effective. Hopefully it's more effective. Hopefully there's a week 1 to week 2 jump. But if they were thinking they needed to go vertical more, I don't think that's going to happen. Not to the extent that they would if they thought they were facing a Houston the way you would expect a power 4 team to come into Norman and present a threat.
And the only thing you might see with like the verticality is you may see the third guy, assuming Anderson's not going to be there,
to see if
he can go do it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like you said, I think we gave JJ Hester that shot the other day, and he missed. And regardless, that wide receiver group, Jay, you sent it the other day in our group text. Guys are young. We're stacked. Like, I know Farouk is a veteran. I know Gibson was going to be a weapon and a veteran as well. There's no reason that we shouldn't have a next man up who can go fill that spot.
Yeah, there's enough other teams that we watch where you see 4-star kids straight ball out. And
or guys emerge in the middle of the season.
It's been a while where we've kind of needed a guy to do that. But there's 4 or 5 guys on the bench that were top 200 players in the country. They should all be able to step in.
I think you move Burks outside. Let's have fun and say Anderson's healthy. Anderson on the other side, Petaway in the slot, and you're set. I think it's easy. I think after last week, Brandon Thompson goes to second string, and those are your 3 guys.
So if I were Latrell, here's what I would do to wait. And
I don't think Anderson will play.
I don't think he'll play either.
I don't think he really will.
Here's what I would do out of the gate. I would stretch vertical and present a threat and try to get a points on the board, obviously, but real fast. Like to exploit where you think there's a weakness.
And then stop.
And then work on other things, hoping that opens everything up. And every time it doesn't, I would not allow them to put 7 or 8 in the box. If they put 7 or 8 in the box, we're going to do what we have to do and make them pay for it and tell Arnold, green light, check into what you need to check into. But if it's not that, then we're going to run the ball.
Well, that's the thing, too.
And then you get real training on running the ball against a legitimate, regular type of defense, not a defense that is very, very difficult. Like you said, if Broken Arrow's in there, it's tough to run against 8 in the box.
Mm-hmm. And make Arnold show that he can do it as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, everyone wants to see Jackson be the guy.
Well, that's why I feel like
Let him go be the guy.
I feel like um, we're taking for granted how easy it is to hit a 50-yard fence.
Right. Right.
Right. So by us sitting here saying, "Oh, we just haven't done it yet. We know it's there. We just haven't done it." That's
Yeah.
kind of a little bit of a
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel.
No, I
don't
agree.
know.
No
I
one's
don't know.
saying that.
I don't think we. I don't think we.
I think any
We
of us
haven't
are
been able
saying
to take
that.
that for granted for 2 years with
yeah.
Dylan Gabriel.
Agree.
But no, you're right. Like
And
we are just
You can't just
assuming.
be like, "Oh, we can do it. We'll do it when we need to." No, you still have to hit it.
You have to
in a
hit
game.
it. You have to prove you can hit it. You have to
Prove you can catch it.
prove you can
Yeah.
catch it, and you have to prove to other teams you can do it. So it's kind of like the argument about hiding everything versus showing stuff. It's like, no, let's show them. Hell, let's show them a fake punt in week 2 because then they have to prepare
Just
for
to
it.
spend time on it.
And now Texas and Tennessee and everybody has to go spend time on that and say, oh my God, they've seen our fake punt. Well,
Yeah,
hopefully we won't be in a position to run a fake punt. Or if they do, then you pin them deep because they've had to prepare for it and they've got to do something completely different rather than set up their return. So there's an argument of yin and yang on that for sure that I think coaches take a knee jerk of we want to hide everything. And Lincoln was the worst about this, hide everything as if everything was going to work guaranteed once you rolled it out there for the first time, which not to get off on a topic, but he in the game against LSU this week, they ran a play that didn't work out so well. That was one of those time of razzle dazzle plays, and you could see that it was. I think it was a one of his classic pitch back to the quarterback to throw the ball, and it just wasn't there. And so it doesn't have to work if you don't have the personnel and you haven't trained for it properly. It may not work, and then it's completely ineffective if that's the first time you're deploying it versus a team had to prepare for it to open up other plain vanilla type of offensive strategies you want to run. So obviously, a lot of question marks remain, and a lot that we're going to be paying attention to. We'll come back to some of this, but let's get into 2 details. We touched on this a little bit, so we've got kind of question marks about who is running back 1, who is running back 2, what is the running back rotation, what is the wide receiver rotation, who's going to be in this week, assuming Anderson is not playing. If he is,
DeMarco's first game of the season.
DeMarco's first game. Now that he's back from cheating, he's just a dirty little cheater. Love it. Stupid rule.
DeMarco was SEC ready before all.
I love it. Thank you, DeMarco. So, what do you guys think about running back and wide receiver?
Running back's hard to gauge again because the offensive line was ineffective. I think later in the game, some of the bigger ones you saw were individual plays by the running back,
right?
Where they bounced it themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it, but yeah, it's just them.
Right. And, Sawchuk, when I went back and rewatched the game, I don't know that he was timid. I just don't know that there was really anywhere to go.
Right.
Now, you could argue he maybe needed to hit the hole a little harder or a little quicker, but it wasn't like he was just missing these lanes to run through and what was he doing? And
it wasn't really like
there wasn't a good flow.
It wasn't like Barnes was in the Tulsa game where he was running into the back of the player.
Barnes had a good run off to the left side, but he had to avoid a guy 5 yards deep in the backfield. Somebody completely whipped on the ball. And he happened to get around him and had like a 20-yard gain off of it. Against other teams, that's just a blown up play. And we're not talking about a good run by Barnes.
Right. And you may be talking about a 4 or 5 yard loss that's critical.
Yeah. So, I mean, Tatum obviously has a skill set that maybe some of our other guys don't have yet. And that's a lot to say considering, he didn't get here till summer.
How optimistic are you on Tatum?
I mean, it's early, but he looks like a dude.
Yeah, he does.
And he's going to be pushing for the 2 spot.
What's interesting with running back recruiting in general and from all these services and stuff, I think it's one of the easier positions to figure out who's a dude and who's not a dude when it comes to these things.
Right.
Running back, right?
Right.
I think offensive line are really hard to judge. They're just so much bigger and stronger than every other kid they're going against.
Well, there's
You could
also
say the same for quarterbacks.
there's subtle intellectual things about offensive line and quarterback that don't come into play with running back, where the running back can smooth over.
Yeah.
Because if you've got legs and you've got power, you can make a wrong move and it doesn't matter because you make up for brute force. But truly, it big and strong as they are, brute force is not going to get it done on the offensive line. You've got to have technique and you've got to be smart about that first jump and who you're looking at. And if you look the wrong way, it doesn't matter how strong you are. You're not going to make up for it.
Yeah, there's a much better hit rate on recruiting rankings on running backs than maybe almost any other position. So
we can look at him in the uniform and get a pretty good approximation of what that guy's capable of doing.
And it's not the most dynamic of intellectual positions on the field.
Right.
So you can bring in
Except
a guy
when it comes to things like blocking,
sure,
which may speak to why Sawchuk's won, because he may have the brains about what is the blocking scheme, where am I going? That's where it really gets subtle. And again, that's like an offensive line
and I'm not
type of decision.
I'm not saying that Tatum is some next Adrian Peterson or something, but at some point you just be like, okay, he doesn't know exactly who to block, but he has to be on the field for first and second down and third. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna give up this
Well
to take all of this over
think
here.
about back to Alabama.
Because I promise you, Adrian Peterson didn't know who to block,
right,
how to block,
and it didn't matter.
And he's got to play.
Well, think about back to Alabama in the Sugar Bowl and how they're playing the long player.
Oh yeah, if they play Derrick Henry, we'll lose that game.
Derrick Henry was because Derrick Henry had a lot of development left to go, and where he was at the start of even that game, which is a bowl game at the end of the season, versus where he ends up in his career as an NFL running back, intellectually and knowing the position, it's night and day. He was just a guy go forward, and he could just go forward. And now he's a guy that does everything else. But you were just asking him to go forward, and sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Especially against the defenses of yore.
They got back into that game because of him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally on his back. It was he carried that team to making it close up until we pulled away in the fourth. So
yeah.
And I say this interestingly. I hope that Tatum doesn't take over midway through the season because Sawchuk and Barnes are just
good enough. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, something's gone wrong if that happens.
But if he does,
or something, there's about a 10% chance something's going super right because Tatum is the next that level running back. And there's a 90% chance something's gone wrong and we're having to fall back on a guy who still could be really great, but is not going to be there in a true freshman year.
That's true.
And as far as wide receivers go, man, it gets thin quick.
Yeah.
Right. And
seemingly
feel terrible for Farouk. It'd be interesting to see what he does with his career.
Hope for the best that he can come back and have some productive time and elevate himself in the draft. That's just such a tough position to be in.
Yeah, I think the Brennan Thompson experiment so far, where he's showing himself being able to run multiple routes, do different things, wasn't very successful this past weekend.
Well, definitely not, because part of being a receiver is catching the ball.
Yes.
And the other part is knowing where the sticks are and going forward and getting the first down,
which
when it's right there in front of you
is a fairly easy correction. It's just just a young guy messing up.
Yes.
He's a junior.
He is, but he's not like a Farouk Jr. or something. He has a bunch of playing.
I mean,
I know the clock is ticking on figuring that stuff out.
That's just like football IQ 101.
Listen, to me, that is a fast guy that's used to running lateral and beating everybody.
Right. And that's a mistake.
He's got to figure out.
Maybe a coaching
Well,
mistake.
That's exactly what he thought he was going to do.
Got to turn it
ball.
Right. Well, now, again, not
he's
to dwell
been
on
the
that
fastest guy on the football field his entire life.
But he should have just turned up in that case then. All the more reason
they don't
turn
do
and run.
They don't do that when they're kids.
I know. Right? You're right. They run around the guy.
They go outside
they
and they go. That's what they do.
You're right.
And he just instinctively was like, I'm faster than everybody.
So give him a chance. We're week one, by week 2, week 3, and down the road, maybe he's made the turn.
Petaway's apparently healthy. It'll be exciting to see if he can step up. some of the young guys need to step up. If you look at someone who could maybe replace Farouk as in style and size of body, it'd be Kearney. Um, he's a big bodied 6'1", 6'2", 200-pound type receiver. Um, Reagan's is a tiny little speedster. You can only have so many of those on the field at once.
But just one slipping out there can really
I don't know.
wreak havoc.
What do you think, Connor?
I mean, I still want to see. I mean, running back, I agree with basically everything you said. We need to see Sawchuk and Barnes be the one-two punch that we expect them to be. And I think they can and will be. I really do. They're good enough. They're both healthy. So they should be able to step into that role. It's just depending on your offensive line getting stuff figured out, right? Wide receiver wise, again, next man up mentality. I mean, I think JJ Hester can be a guy, but the lights were on last week and they seemed like they got to him a little bit. I mean, he had the deep ball drop, which it's not an easy catch, but you play for Oklahoma, you're a redshirt senior, you catch that ball, and he had one over the middle that goes right through his hands for a first down. So you got to be better there. As much criticism as I've given Farouk because of some of his antics last year and his fumbles and his lack of care for the ball, catching a little bit of the Jalen Hurts syndrome. He's a guy that you could count on. I mean, he won us the game with that catch from Jackson Arnold against BYU. He's a guy that you can really kind of lean on as a veteran presence. So it's big shoes to fill. The room is deep enough to be able to figure out someone who can do it. And if you're Reagan's or you're Kearney or still if you're Hester, you're chomping at the bit right now because you are this close to being on the first string depth chart.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago, you weren't, right?
And
3 weeks ago, these guys were like, man, I'm probably gonna barely get on the
yeah,
field this year.
go be a guy.
And now someone has a chance to take it
And go be a
and run
guy.
it.
Yeah.
So one of those guys is going to be behind Anderson and Anthony and Burks, you know, or I say or one of those guys. So it's just a matter of stepping up. And I think we got the talent to do it. I really, really, really want to see JJ Hester figure it out though. And the dude is long. He's got length on him. It looks like he had some speed. Just put it all together and go make the play. So
Well, I completely agree. I think what you want is in all of those positions, you want a playmaker. I want the luxury of everybody out there is executing at a high level so that it's a tough decision every time you're trying to decide who goes where. And we get into a position where we're in games like let's fast forward to a game against Maine, and we're obviously deep into our lineup, and you're saying, "Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about him. Look at him. Look what he's doing today." And you're seeing that as both the future as well as another weapon that you've got versus after you see those first few receivers or running backs, there's a big fall off, and you don't get the production, you don't get the execution, you don't get the guy making the play. We want to just make sure you get a guy always making the play and being able to do it. So I think that's something that we want. I mean, I don't want to be greedy about
in
it,
a
but
perfect world, if you get an Angel Anthony back to where he was last year, and you have a Nick Anderson on the field and a Burks, that's about as good a three as you could ask for on just about every team in the entire country.
right.
But Anderson's deal doesn't sound serious, but he hasn't been out there. Angel Anthony might not ever get back to being that guy.
Right.
So, cross our fingers because a trio of that kind can be very, very, very deadly.
One of the things I lean back on pretty consistently is, and again, it's not a direct comparison or maybe even fair, but you look at what Baker Mayfield had to work with in 2015 from a wide receiver group. He had one guy. He had Sterling Shepard.
Really true.
And everyone else around him was just kind of a guy.
Honestly, year after year, he only had one guy.
Yeah.
One true guy.
2017 was maybe an exception. You had CD, you had
A
Hollywood.
young CD.
You had a freshman CD.
And you had Hollywood.
And you had Mark Andrews as an outlet.
Yeah, and you had Mark Andrews was really the go-to. And Hollywood didn't emerge until
halfway through the season. Yeah, maybe a little bit after half.
Yeah.
The thing that saved a lot of those teams, or not saved, but really benefited those teams, was how much we used like Dimitri Flowers out of the backfield.
Right.
And
created
Joe Mixon out of the backfield as a ad hoc wide receiver. So,
well, you had a guy making plays. You had somebody stepping up and doing what they needed to do. And I think that's what's really key in all of that. Let's hope we don't get run over by Ava pulling in here. So, if you die during this podcast, we'll speak well of you.
Thank you.
Truly
becomes 2 homers and a realist at that point.
Now I just have to give this opportunity. She's running our Instagram page, and so we're up on Instagram. Check us out. So we're on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. Go like, subscribe, do all the things you do. I don't know what you do on all these different services or whatnot.
A bunch of buttons.
But get out there and click the buttons for sure.
I would prefer my urn to be here with you guys.
That'd be good. We will. We'll always have you here. Yeah. We'll sprinkle a little ashes after every victory.
We'll pour a little tequila.
Pour a little out. Pour a little out for homie. So when you're looking at these players, we've been talking about these guys, and especially at running back, you mentioned Flowers and all those other running backs that stepped up and made plays. And so what you needed was a guy that you could depend on, a guy that could make plays. You talk about a guy you could depend on. You want to talk about a mean son of a bitch. Joe Don Looney was a mean son of a bitch. Joe Don Looney, when you said get something,
sounds like one.
He'd go get something.
Same with Looney.
He'd look up at Coach Wilkinson and he'd say, "I'm going to get this first down, Coach." And by God, he got it every time. And he wore the uniforms of back in the 1950s. Now, what's going to happen this Saturday? You guys remind me. What's going to happen this Saturday in terms of the uniforms?
I mean, I think Josie took a listen to one of a few pods we talked about the song.
Yep, he's listening to it.
And we're throwing it back.
It's throwback.
So we're going homage to Bud Wilkinson era. We are wearing the red jerseys with the white stripes on the sleeves, and going the white helmet with the red stripe down the middle of it. And it looks gorgeous, in my opinion.
I think it's gorgeous too. I'm excited about it. It's going to be beautiful.
The last time we did this was North Texas 2002.
In the rain. No rain this Saturday.
I will say I really liked those jerseys against North Texas because of how big the numbers were.
Yeah.
These ones apparently are a little bit more historically accurate.
Yeah.
Is what they say. But no,
they're sharp looking now.
I really hope we can figure out how to incorporate this into a once a season thing.
Yeah, I would love to see this be our go-to in terms of alternative uniforms. I don't know why we would do anything different. I think it's a great.
That seems so easy.
Homage back to where you've been, the success that really was the foundation that the program's built on. I know we trace it back to Benny Owen as well, but it's really Wilkinson who established this. So it's a good tie-in. I think keeps things. There's a lot of good continuity there. At some point, we'll be looking at throwbacks from the Switzer era. I mean, honestly, that's 40 plus years ago, and so that's also an era that is a long time ago for a lot of people, especially kids today who are playing the game. So I think it's great. I love the throwbacks. Anything else to cover about the upcoming game before we transition into some predictions? We could talk about other games, either games that occurred last week or games of interest going forward. Obviously, Texas-Michigan's a pretty interesting game this week.
It is. I feel a lot different about it coming off of the weekend of week 1 than what I did going into it. Michigan didn't look great against Fresno State. Texas looked, again, it's Colorado State. Texas looked like a dominant football team. Whether we like it or not, I think Michigan's going to have a hard time. I think Michigan's defense can maybe keep that game, in question for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm taking stock of both teams just face to face. I probably pick Texas most of the time in that
to
game.
Win or to cover.
To win.
I mean, 7.5 points is how much they're favored by.
Yeah,
looks legitimate to me.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
I
would almost pick them to cover in most cases at that line, to be honest.
So it's going to be interesting because we just know so little out of a week one period.
Yeah.
of
So
anybody.
yeah, at that point though, like, was Michigan doing what OU was doing?
And was Texas
Was
just exploiting?
Yeah, was Michigan practicing 2 days before the Fresno State game for Fresno State and practicing the other 3 days for Texas? Very well could be.
Very well could be.
Michigan's quarterback looks not good though.
Yeah.
Like he looks pretty bad.
Yeah. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, man, obviously can't stand Texas. Colorado State's a decent team, and they really took it to them. If
Decent.
if we had been
Decent.
in their
Decent.
shoes,
When you were still an interception.
if we had been in their shoes, I would feel like that's a pretty good.
Right.
I would feel pretty happy.
It was
Very
a
happy
solid
with that.
win, top to bottom, did what you needed to do. Yeah.
I mean, I think Colorado State's better than Temple.
That's probably true.
Yeah. I wouldn't say
Hard
it's
to say.
extensively.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's like at that point, I mean, that distribution's so weird when you get to that level.
I'm not trying
We'll
to
argue with
hype
you on that all
Texas
day.
up or anything, but Colorado State's better than Temple.
Unless
Now
there
sold
was
on
more.
Michigan. Very surprised that the other quarterback, Orji, didn't get the start. He's a big, athletic, dynamic kid that just really, really stresses your defense. But maybe he just can't make the right reads or the right throws. I don't know.
Michigan has had
Came in
a
spots last year, right, where they bring him in to
yeah.
do wildcat type ish plays.
They've had a quarterback quote unquote controversy for like the 4 out of the last 5 years. I think last year was the exception where they knew it was JJ and JJ ended up just being the guy. Outside of that, Harbaugh was always back and forth between quarterbacks like they love.
I mean, Texas lost a lot of players, but there's one team that lost even more, and that was Michigan.
Yeah.
And I don't care whether you go in-house or who you bring in. It's to sustain that with that many players lost and your coaching staff. And
well, I mean, we're all sitting here last year before the national championship. I mean, I remember sitting in Steve's living room worrying because Texas almost made the most unbelievable comeback in playoff history in the last 2.5 minutes of that game. I thought they were going to come back and win, and I was concerned. I was concerned because I had no question that Texas would beat Michigan.
Yeah,
like there was no question in my mind that that was what was going to happen, and it wasn't because it was just like, oh, it's just Texas, they're going to win. It was no, Texas looks like the better football team, so I don't expect to see much different on Saturday. I think it'll be a good game, but Texas shows what they have, and there is something to be said for how much experience Quinn Ewers has. I think they'll be in pretty good shape to win the game.
In previous years, we wanted Texas to win this game,
right?
Because it makes our matchup, both of our only real matchups of the season, to look better,
right?
And now
we root against Texas.
Gosh, I hope they go up there and just get mud stomped.
I do too.
Unfiltered.
It's not going to happen.
It works on multiple levels for us. What we want to have happen is probably a lot of muddled, not very good competition in the SEC in terms of, when I say competition, I mean how good their records look. And so we want every marginal loss for our SEC opponents to be stacking up. We would love for the Big Ten to field two dominant teams and have two clear teams in the playoff and then an arguable third team. And then you want in other leagues to have the same situation. You want a team to run the table in the Big 12 and win the conference title outright, and everybody else to have 3 losses at least. And same in the ACC. And then if you can do that, and then you look good in what looks to everyone as the most dominant league, then you easily could get 4 teams in from the SEC. And so that's kind of the playbook on how you, if you were to script it, give yourself as an SEC team the best chance to make the 12 team.
And you wrote a good article on that as well. I really enjoyed that kind of take because it is such a stark difference from what we're so used to in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
And needing certain teams to win, Texas specifically at times to make our case better.
Kansas State to not blow it these next 2 weeks so that you can go get a good ranked win.
Right, exactly. You're saying, how does this stack up? And can I get a quality win here? Can I get if I lose, I need to be, that was the worst when you lose to one of these teams. Say, oh my God, I need them to win the rest of their game, so it's a quality loss.
Yeah.
And now that's all.
Well, they never would.
And they never would. So now that's all different for sure. So let's transition a little bit. Let's talk about a few things on predictions, but let's start with some trivia of the week. So we play Houston this week.
Okay.
This is our. Do you guys know how many times we played Houston coming into this? Jay, do you know?
I do not.
We played Houston 4 times. This is our 5th time to play them. We played them first in 1981 and last in 2019. So a long span of history
What was
for
the
just
second
4
game?
games. So the second game was in 2004, and the third game was in 2016.
Right. Yep.
We're 3-1 against
3-1.
Houston.
Tom Harmon.
Do you have any idea what the average score is for the Sooners versus the Houston Cougars, and what the margin of victory is for the Sooners? Any guesses?
Average score.
I'm trying to take that loss into account.
I'm going to throw just some numbers on the dark. I'd say 34-18.
Okay, not bad.
Yeah.
Really not bad.
I won't throw any scores. I'll say a 24-point margin of victory.
Both very good guesses. So we have averaged 43.75 points versus giving up 22.75 for a 21-point margin of victory. Now, last bit of trivia. In that span of 1981 through 2019, all of the games OU played, 620, I think, if I remember right, from calculating this. Do you think our margin of victory was the same, higher, or lower, and to what degree, than that 21-point margin of victory that we have enjoyed against Houston in just 4 games?
Oh, the 90s were so bad.
I'll say our margin of victory is lower.
I'm going to say higher because I think the mid 2000s probably boosted us up a bit. Even those, I'm going to say higher.
It is lower.
Oh.
So while we enjoyed a 21-point margin of victory against Houston in the 4 appearances, and we're favored by almost 30 points in this game, we only averaged a 14.4 margin of victory for that entire span against all opponents, 1981 through 2000.
That's pretty remarkable.
So that is definitely the 90s pulling that down, with the 80s having really good margins of victory, and of course the 2000s enjoying really good margins of victory all the way through 2019. But that was thanks to the realist Lucas for that trivia of the week. Now the next thing we're going to get to, guys, is just predictions. And when we talk predictions, we're talking about locks of the week.
The realest deal, locks of the week.
And for the locks of the week, we have a listener who is chiming in. That's going to be Nolan with his expert takes on what the locks of the week are. So should I start with Nolan, or should I roll back into Nolan after you guys give your picks?
Let's give Nolan the start.
All right, Nolan,
little guy.
Thanks for being a listener, and thanks for participating in locks of the week. Nolan starts with Texas giving 7.5 to Michigan. He takes Texas. He likes Kentucky giving 10 to South Carolina. And he likes Nebraska giving 7.5 to Colorado. Pretty interesting picks. Can't say that I disagree with really any of them, to tell you the truth, although I hope at least one of them goes differently. I really want Nebraska to win big. I'd love to see them win by double digits. Let me give my locks of the week, and then you guys can give yours, and I've got Lucas's, so we'll give Lucas's as well. So I've got SMU covering 10.5 against BYU. I think the ponies run. Georgia Tech giving 3 against Syracuse. I picked against Syracuse last week and I won, and I'm going to pick against them again.
Right.
And I got Maryland giving 8.5 to Michigan State. And I had to double take that one twice because it surprised me both times. But those are 2 bad teams. And Maryland's going to cover the 8.5. So Connor, what do you got?
I've got Kansas giving 5.5 against Illinois. I've got Tennessee giving 7.5 against NC State. And I'm going to ride the Homer train. I've got OU giving 29.5 against Houston.
How did we come up with so many of the same games?
It's it's like our minds are melding. Tell me what you got, Jay.
I also went with Kentucky minus the 10, South Carolina. I also went with Tennessee minus the 7.5 against NC State. And then I really struggled for a third. The Texas line shifted on me.
It did. You wanted
Six
it
and a
6
half
and a
to
half,
7.5.
and it moved.
So
Let the asterisk know.
I think I settled with
Nebraska.
the Fighting Rules in Nebraska. It's a little bit of a anti-Dion pick, just a smidge. I also think Nebraska's gonna defensively really shut them down because they invested in their O-line and all these other places, and it did not show up.
What time is that game?
Same time as ours.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
bummer.
Yeah.
It. I really feel like I'm a Matt Rule fan. I like what they've got going on at Nebraska stylistically versus Colorado. I've never been a believer in Dion and all
I think it's a coaching mismatch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, can Nebraska, rein in Shador and
Well, you got to get in the backfield. I mean, Shador was the most sacked quarterback last year in the
Nebraska
NCAA.
sacked him 8 times last year.
And Nebraska should have won that game.
And they should have won the game.
Yeah, they had Sims that had 5 fumbles.
That game was
right.
Infuriating.
So yeah, I don't know.
I'm hopeful for the same.
It either look like an idiot or it's like the easiest cover.
As much as I want to shade Shador and those guys, Shador is a good quarterback. Travis Hunter is a freak, but
they got 2 players.
They got 2 players.
You just listed their players.
2 players.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Horn's pretty good.
yeah, Horn's pretty good. I think Nebraska's in a good spot. I think the Big Ten needs to be kind of. We'll see. I'll make this statement. Actually, I'll make it after next week.
I actually think it'll be fun too if Nebraska gets past this game. There's a good chance they're either 7-0
or 8-0. Yeah,
and playing what
Ohio
State. I think. I mean, so just as a college football fan, I would love to see Nebraska beat 7-0 and going into
that's awesome for everybody that's spoken of the death in Nebraska. The reports of their death may be premature because they may be back at least as a team of contention.
Is there a guy out west, real popular guy out west?
Hmm?
Is there a real popular commentator, blogger, sports guy out west that
I've heard of
the demise of Nebraska?
Nebraska, yeah. They said they're dead. Yeah. I think there is
It'd be good just to have to hear him talk.
Yeah, just to see what he has to say about that. So Lucas's pick, not to be forgotten, his locks of the week: Iowa giving 2.5 to Iowa State.
I like that pick.
Tennessee giving 7.5 to NC State.
Gosh,
everybody loves that game. And Kansas State giving 9.5 to Tulane. He's just such a Tulane hater. He can't believe in Tulane, and he loves Kansas State.
He hates the first podcast.
You know what though? That is a great game for us to watch.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, we're gonna
get a good measure.
We're gonna be a little puckered up if Tulane is,
speak
toe to toe.
Speak for yourself, sir.
We'll see about that.
Speak for yourself. I do have Kansas State as a playoff team.
I'm just saying,
this mouse is running back.
That's
incredible.
If that's a 3-point game and Tulane's just giving Kansas State everything they want, like phillicality wise, we've got ourselves a whole different game.
I will ask if Spencer Rattler is playing quarterback.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we've got a prop bet of the week, and that is the number of Sooners who will have a reception in the upcoming game against Houston, and the over-under is set at 7.5. So Lucas gave us this line, and I'll start with his prediction. He says, are you ready? You have your predictions already locked in?
I've got mine.
I don't want to bias you.
Okay. We can go first.
Lucas says over. I say over.
I've got over.
Connor has over. Jay?
I'll go over.
All right.
My reason being, we've got to find who can step up a bit.
Right.
So I think everyone's going to get a chance.
And there should be a lot of opportunities, more opportunities potentially than what you saw in the last game, where your short yardage situations with the turnovers.
I mean, you've got 2 tight ends and you've got 3 receivers that are going to catch the ball.
Right.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
We need 3 more guys. I think that's an easy open.
Well, let's go to some easy predictions, and that is score. You guys want to lead us off on score prediction for this game?
Yeah, I'll lead us off. I'm gonna change mine
Oh,
that I just sent you. I'm gonna go 52-10.
so you're thinking a field goal comes into play?
I do think a field goal, and I think I think Tyler Keltner doing what he did last week. I think Brent's gonna be very okay with running him out there when we're inside the 35-yard line on a 4th and 3.
4th and 3, I would be disappointed if we kicked.
I would
4th
too,
and
but I
3.
think he will. It's Brent.
I'm going 41-10.
41-10.
Yeah, I still don't.
How do you get to 41?
2 field goal.
2 field goals.
Oh, okay.
45 and 2
I
field
still
goals.
don't think we're just
How much did UNLV score against them?
open it up. 28,
8?
4, 7, 20.
It's UNLV, right? They play 7 platoon football. Okay. Lucas, interestingly, has 41-10. Same
You guys
prediction.
are so ridiculous.
Keeping with
It's usually you and him.
yeah, it's true. Keeping with everybody has to be the same. I've got the same score for Houston, 10 points. I think we're gonna give up 10 points. But unlike you doubters,
65.
we're gonna score. If it could be so low.
60.
70. 70-10. 70-10 is the number.
Dude.
We're gonna open it up and we're gonna roll. And it's gonna be a false positive. It's gonna be we look extremely good on offense. Everything's clicking. It's an extremely weak defense. We score after score after score. We may score defensively as well. And so we run the score up 70-10.
I like it.
That's my prediction.
Well, it'll be fun to watch.
It will be fun to watch. It'll be hopefully a game that we can learn some stuff from.
So let me get this straight.
Yeah.
They were not one of your locks.
No, they're not one of my locks.
They're going to cover by 30.
But they're not one of my
But they're
locks.
not one of your locks. Okay.
No. See, that's how good my locks are.
Okay.
That my locks are that sure.
Just checking.
Even though, so you don't even want to know what my locks are going to be.
Yeah.
Like it's out of this world.
All right.
We'll see. 70-10.
He's like, damn,
Mark it down.
Mark
it down. No, I have a method to the madness.
I know
There's
you
a
do.
reason.
I know you do. You're
So
so
anything else to cover? Anything else that we're looking forward to? It's been a pretty good pod, despite the fact we haven't had a realist here to kind of.
We went.
Do we go?
We went 2-1. We went 2-1 for 3.
What we go last week?
on locks. We and 1 and 2 for me. I think we went.
Yeah, we
7 and
Great point. Let's
7
talk
and
about
5.
last week on locks.
7 and 5.
So our locks of the week were 7 and 5, 58%. Our listener was 2 and 1. Now they
beat me.
Fewer, they're 67%, but we'll see as the season plays on and they pick more games. But yeah, 7 and 5, 58%. We're covering the juice. We're doing good.
Great team, guys.
3 of us were 2 and 1. 1 of us was 1 and 2.
Freaking Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I didn't expect them to look
That's sad. That's just frustrating and sad.
It was so bad. They don't have a quarterback.
They don't have a lot of things.
You know, it's funny when you pick
and Virginia Tech losing to Vandy is wild.
Yeah, that's really
crazy.
When after you make a pick and then the games happen, you look back on it, it's easy to doubt yourself. Like, what was I thinking?
The Notre Dame.
Why didn't I pick this so odd?
The Notre Dame A&M game, I feel like that. The Vanderbilt La Tech game, I felt like I was completely bamboozled.
Yeah, see, I feel how you feel about the Notre Dame game with West Virginia.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of that game.
The weather delay didn't help.
They just gave a lot away. They dropped a lot of first down passes.
Yeah.
I really thought they're going to put up a much bigger fight than that. And I've never really been a Penn State believer.
I'm still not.
I'm
not a Franklin believer.
No, yeah, just in general. That's what I mean.
I did thoroughly enjoy.
Thought that Penn State might be in a real pickle.
Everyone did. They had like 3 guys on game day pick West Virginia. I honestly loved watching those freaking Appalachian hillbillies struggle. They suck. I think they're super overrated. I think they throw out a game here and there where it's like, oh, okay, this actually is like a team. They've always been that team though,
Yeah.
like since '07, and they're gonna finish bottom half of the Big 12, I think.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt.
So I mean, it's a they got way too much credit going into that game. Maybe it's Pat McAfee, stoking the fire. They got a lot of credit going into that game that I think was completely unfounded. It was crazy. And Penn State, whether we like it or not, as much as we all don't believe in James Franklin, it's freaking Mike Gundy. Like he
Finds
figures it
a
out.
way. Yeah.
Penn State is the Texas A&M of the Big Ten. Always kind of there, but they never do anything.
Yep.
They beat non-con teams, never really do anything else after that. So, anyways, it's gonna be a fun week too.
Any other thoughts, Jay?
No, don't think so.
All right. Well, it's been a good pod. We're going to welcome the realists back when we're here for the post game. We're going to have a lot to cover.
70 to 10.
It's going to be beautiful. We're going to be talking about 70 to 10. It's going to be late at night. I'm excited, guys. It's going to be awesome
Oh,
weather.
wait. I do
Yeah.
have one thing.
Okay.
Our EA simulation
Oh.
score of the week.
Yeah, simulation games of the week. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go.
So,
What happened?
I took the extra time
Uh-huh.
and did 30 simulations.
30. That's
30.
statistically significant.
Yes. 15-minute quarters.
Okay.
Heisman level.
Wow.
I think it was, I'm trying to remember now. Was it OU? Was it like 24-21?
It was something like that. It was something
yeah.
really tight.
And Houston,
Not a 21-point margin of victory as we've historically averaged.
Houston won
26-24.
8 out of 10.
26.
They won 2 out of 10.
24.
Yeah, 26-24, and they won
They won 10 out
They
of 30.
went 20 and
10 out of 30.
They won 10 out of 30 straight up. For EA.
I'm sorry. No. Your video game is stupid.
It's not my game.
It's dumb. It's dumb.
I
It's
agree.
dumb.
We should play when we get home.
So what do you think's going on there? Do you think that they are putting their thumb on the scale saying the Oklahoma fans are going to love this game no matter, or they're going to play this game no matter what? We've got to keep engaged the Houston fans and everybody else.
It's rating settings.
How is it rigged?
It's rating settings that are like on an algorithm that basically
I think-
scale to scoring.
Now, this is just from like different message board fodder and people complaining about stuff on Twitter, but I think I know they've updated their dynasty settings because there were way too many simulation games where like an FCS team was upsetting you,
Right.
right? And you're like, come on, guys, that happens once out of every 300 games, and
especially it has
and
to
it
be
keeps
like a
happening
game
over and over.
team at this level
Yeah.
and this level. Yeah.
And so I don't know that whatever algorithm they have is finely tuned at the moment to
Yeah.
really simulate a game.
I guarantee you there's thumb on the scale there.
But I actually tried it the previous week against Temple because I thought the same thing because I was like, this score is ridiculous. Like Temple's like a 68 overall and
Right.
OU's an 88 overall. And the games were just so tight. Like it made no sense. So I was like, all right, let me throw Texas against Temple a couple of times, who's very highly rated in the game. And it was basically the same outcome. They were,
So
7-point win, 10-point
they're
win.
obviously putting their thumb on the scale for the lower teams.
I guess.
They're giving them a chance that they don't have.
But
they're ignoring the fact that because if you're no, I don't know about Temple. But if you are a fan of, if they're looking out there at the fan base that they've got and the draw they've got, like let's say SMU. So if I'm an executive at EA, I'm saying, well, SMU is a very important fan base. They're a very important demographic for us economically. They're going to buy the game. These are rich kids and rich alumni. They're going to buy the game. So I don't want their team to be trash. If their team is trash, then I'm going to disenfranchise them, and they're going to turn against me.
They have made teams trash, but it doesn't equate in the simulation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Trash isn't the same thing as true trash. Like they're not going to look at a team like here's the distribution in real life. It's this wide. They're going to squeeze it down to here because they're going to say we want these teams at the bottom to have a much greater chance than they're ever going to have. So basically, take the point spread of whatever you want the point spread to be and reduce it by a touchdown.
Do the defensive or do the overall stats, like offensive overall, defensive overall, etc., correlate to player ratings on the roster?
I'm not sure how they do it because if you took the entire roster and did an average, you're not going to
You're
get an
not
88
getting
overall of
yeah.
it, right? So I don't know if that's just
It's
projected 2D or the starters only. I don't even know if the starters average would be an 88.
It's just a crapshoot. It's
Yeah.
a video game.
But I feel like
It might not be real life. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just gonna say.
I think they'll
Or you
dial
cover
it
the
in.
spread against them.
I think they'll dial it in.
Okay.
I will take that bet.
Well, that'll be interesting to see by the end of the year if you go back and play a game like an OU Temple or an OU Houston at the end of the year, depending on how things play, or take whoever.
It should equate to the spread.
Take whoever. Take a Georgia. Take whoever does great, and let's see how they do against that really bottom feeder team, and let's see if it's different. So Texas Temple is one example. Get some other examples in the repertoire so that you can go back at the end of the year and see how they fare because we don't know who's going to be the top and who's going to be at the bottom. Let's see a top versus bottom in retrospect to see if they really dial it down and dial
I'll
it
try
in.
and do some Googling too and see if their simulations actually play out every play. Or if they just kind of
Right.
generate
They pull from a
something.
yeah, they pull from a script.
Or do they really hyper speed, you know,
Right.
because it takes about
They don't. There's
it takes
no
about
way.
30
There's
seconds
no way.
to do a simulation. And it appears that they run through
You know what they
all
probably
the
do? They probably take the first play from the coach's suggestion on offense and the first play from the coach's suggestion on defense and
And
run
it
that.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it'd be cool if they did the super sim and you could click into the play to see what was run by each team. That would be a cool feature because
cool.
that would be
Yes, that
would be pretty revealing about how they're actually coming up.
I agree.
So,
I
anyways,
agree. Well, that's very interesting. We'll have a lot more to cover. We're going to have a full post game on the OU Houston absolute debacle, 70-10. Thanks to Dr. Mike for all his support. And until next time, Boomer.
sooner.